Hello everyone, it's Sammy reporting here from InfoAir World, your access to information worldwide. Thank you for joining us. I have the pleasure today of being with Dhesi, who's the MP of Slough representing the Labour Party. Tan, how are you?
I am fine, thank you, Sammy. It's a pleasure to be on InfoAir World, and it's great that you're here in Slough to do an interview.
Thank you very much for your time. I know you're very busy at the moment. Tell us a little bit about what you're up to.
Well, at the moment, Parliament's in recess, but there are local elections, so council elections, as well as police and crime commissioner elections. So this time around, everybody in Slough will be receiving 2 ballot papers. One to elect a local councillor, and secondly to elect their police and crime commissioner for the Thames Valley region. And I am busy campaigning for the Labour candidates to make sure that they all get elected.
Fantastic, fantastic. How is that going? Very busy?
I am quietly confident. I am sure that the good people of Slough will see the hard work that has been done by the council, by the councillors, as well as myself and others, and they will reinstill their faith in Labour.
Fantastic, fantastic. So you've got big plans for Slough. Tell us a little bit about what your ambitions are for the Slough community.
Well, look, we know Slough is a huge business hub. It is a world in microcosm. It's a huge cultural hub as well. So we want to make sure that people living in Slough are proud of their area, and that that we have a town wherein everybody can feel success, that wherein everybody can thrive. So the pandemic has hit our town disproportionately more than many other areas in the country. We've the level of deaths, the level of COVID cases. So we know that not only a health crisis, but also in terms of an economic crisis. Because we have a very, very good rapport with regards to the aviation industry. So that has been particularly hard hit. And that has led to thousands of people either losing their jobs or on the brink of losing their job. So we need to pick ourselves up once again to make sure that the likes of me are pushing government to give support to those sectors, but the council is also there to support people as best as they can with the limited resources and funding that they have. So we are constantly on the government's case as well to make sure that we have our fair share of funding. But unfortunately in the UK as a whole, we have seen the largest death toll in the whole of Europe, wherein more than 125,000 people have lost their lives, and that's just not good enough in terms of for a nation that has the National Health Service and which has one of the most advanced systems in terms of healthcare. But also on top of that, we are now facing the worst economic crisis of any major economy, any major advanced economy on the planet as well. And that is why we feel that the government has let down the British people. So we want to make sure that we hold them to account, but at the same time to go forward together to have a prosperous future.
Fantastic. There's some big plans there, Tan. So bringing that down a little bit for the community of Slough, I mean, what are your, let's say, top 3 objectives and plans for improving the Slough community?
Well, in terms of Slough, I have been working with Slough Borough Council as well. So we have launched our manifesto. So if any of the InfoAir viewers, if they would like to go onto our website, go onto our social media pages, onto the Dhesi page, you'll see that manifesto, wherein we have made promises on some of the things that we've delivered. So just to say that we have delivered on those promises, and some of the things that we want to deliver, whether it's in terms of our transport, in terms of our highways, to also make sure that in terms of our social services, our care services, to also ensure that the public services that Slough constituents should rightly be proud of, but certain things that we want to invest more in, all of those details are on there as well. We're standing in a wonderful park. We all know that the council has invested a lot of money in our parks to make sure that not only are we tackling the climate crisis as we're going forward, but people have got these open air spaces within a highly densely populated urban area, but we've been investing in open air gyms and so on, so that's something that we want to continue going forward as well.
Fantastic.
But the council have also made sure that those individuals, those families that haven't got a great deal, that are dependent on free school meals, that they also have access to that. So the council, even when the funding wasn't available from the National Conservative government, that they carried on and made sure that they provided for those people.
With that in mind, what would you say is your biggest challenge now in terms of achieving some of those, very good ambitions?
Well, the biggest challenge is, I think at the moment, is as we pick ourselves back up again, is the huge economic impact that our area has felt. Right. Because the hospitality sector and the aviation sector, the two sectors that we in Slough are heavily reliant on, wherein there are not thousands but tens of thousands of jobs and households that are reliant on that. Unfortunately, that has been decimated to a great extent, so we need to make sure that support is there from government. Slough has traditionally been very, very lucky in the sense that we have been very good, that we've had a very low unemployment rate. Unfortunately, now we have seen a large number of people on furlough.
Yes.
And as that's now gradually, that support is being taken away by government, many of those people have either lost their job or they're on the verge of losing their job. So those individuals will have problems in terms of providing for their families.
Yes.
So we need to provide for them. So the council is working to ensure that we reskill and ensure that people can go into other spheres of work as well. So in terms of supporting that research and development, in terms of innovation, in terms of businesses as they pick themselves back up, but also to ensure that the apprenticeships and skills are there. So we've now teamed up with Royal Holloway University as well to ensure that there is that offer. And I hope that many constituents will take advantage of that to ensure that they can go into new spheres of work as well.
Yep. Speaking about your constituents, obviously you've been spending a lot of time on the streets, canvassing and meeting a lot of the good people of Slough. What's the kind of key problems or challenges that you think they're facing? Is it really around unemployment and putting food on the table?
Well, look, many of them are struggling to make ends meet, and things, while we've got that huge business hub, there are also issues, there are pockets of social deprivation in terms of issues we know previously with childhood obesity and so on. So those issues have always been there.
Yes.
And that is where, we've been trying to say to the government that you cannot carry on with austerity, as in the deep cuts to public services, to the welfare state, has made even more and more people reliant on food bank. And I know that whether it's the Slough Food Bank and other voluntary organisations, they do an amazing work, and I want to thank the good people who have been volunteering even throughout the pandemic as well. You've done an absolutely amazing job, and so many people are thankful for what you have done. So, but that's amazing what they have done. But people shouldn't have to rely on the food banks. They shouldn't have to rely on voluntary organisations in order to put food on the table. So we've got to make sure that we fight against the cuts to universal credit and the cuts to the welfare state, because that will have an even greater impact on many families. So those are just some of the things that we are trying to do. But if anybody out there is having problems, please do contact me as your MP, and then we can try to make sure that we get help from the relevant government authority as well.
Fantastic. Now, Tan, I must say that video of you in the House of Commons standing up for racism, that went global, and rightfully so. And you were kind of seen as a bit of a beacon against the fight against racism. Now, in light of the recent report that came out with the UK, what are your views on that report, and more specifically, what are your plans to tackle racism in Slough?
Well, thank you very much, first of all, for your kind words. I have always tried to do my level best to hold people in power to account, even if it's the most powerful person. If the Prime Minister, who has a litany of racist, sexist and homophobic remarks, it's my job as the MP for Slough, who represents a very multicultural community, to stand up for our diverse communities, regardless of background or colour or creed. And that is what I promised the good people of Slough about 4 years ago, when I first stood in 2017 to be the MP for the town where I was born and where I spent my formative years. But going on I will continue in that same endeavour, and I will continue to call people out in terms of the report that you've just mentioned. And what I would say is we cannot have just a whitewash. That report needs to acknowledge, first of all, that there are problems in terms of structural problems with regards to institutional racism that need to be dealt with. But if we have a report, or if we have a government which is in denial of that very fact, then I think that we're not going to be able to alleviate those problems of racism and those inequalities. So that is what we have been trying to call out, and the Labour Party and many other organisations, by the way, have been calling the government out on that.
Fantastic, and you'll continue to do that, I'm sure. What are your views on the government's rollout of the vaccine? They've got a lot of praise in terms of the number of people that have been vaccinated. That seems to be going quite well. What are your views on that? What do you think needs to happen next to kind of maintain that in our fight against corona generally?
Well, look, first of all, I would say it's brilliant that we have got so many people vaccinated, and my request to people, and I've been making multilingual videos, whether it's in Punjabi, Hindi, Urdu and English, to try to make sure that we get more and more people vaccinated. So if anybody out there is hesitant, please don't fall for any conspiracy theory. The road out of this pandemic is if we get as many people vaccinated as possible. So that's the first request. And look, the vaccination program, we have been in full support of the government. As an opposition, we are there to hold them to account. But in terms of a national crisis, we need to make sure that we come together and get that vaccination program to be a success.
Fantastic.
But let it also be said that while the vaccination program has been a success, and that is due to the NHS and due to the public services, our doctors, our primary care trusts, but had the government used that same approach with test and trace rather than privatising that, then I think that test and trace system would also have been a success. Instead, they have put the thick end of £37 billion and counting, and that has only had a marginal effect on our fight against the pandemic. And a lot of that has gone to firms who just happen to be linked to Tory donors. So some of those crony COVID contracts, and that is the taxpayers' money, that's your money, which has been doled out to individuals and to these firms who have been supporters of the Conservative Party, many of them, and they have made a complete mess of that. And so that is why we are calling for a review, an independent review of that, and a proper inquiry to make sure that we learn the lessons of what happened during the pandemic, and to hold those people who have profiteered in the midst of a pandemic, that they need to be answerable. So we will keep pushing on that regard as well.
Fantastic. Now, this is a question I'm sure all my listeners and viewers really want to know. Dhesi, if you could have any superpower, what would it be?
I tell you what, that's a very peculiar question. So it's not like Superman. I think if you had the ability to fly, you might be able to do canvassing and the like a lot easier.
True.
But look, I think in terms of superpower, all I would say is if there's a magic one that somebody could have had, is to live in a more peaceful world where people actually got along with each other, rather than in many areas where we've got humanitarian crises where people are loggerheads with each other. So that, I think, is the one thing that, as we would say, aman aman, then if people live in peace, and that if we could have a harmonious communities, I think that's, if you had a magic wand, I think that's the one thing that I would do, along with trying to be Superman and flying around everywhere.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the floor is yours now, Dhesi. Your final views and your message to our viewers listening and viewing worldwide.
Well, look, Sami, I'd like to thank yourself and Salman Ghafoor and the whole team on InfoAir World for coming to Slough and for sharing and giving the opportunity to share views with your viewers. All I would say is I hope that Slough constituents, and indeed people further beyond, are proud of the way that their MP, their Member of Parliament, is representing them. And what I would request you to do is, if you're happy with that, and if you're happy with our programme, that please do continue to support the Labour Party and to vote for our representatives, who no doubt will be amazing advocates for you within the local community.
Dhesi, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure. That's been Dhesi, dear viewers. You've been watching InfoAir World. Don't forget to subscribe. We've also got the Facebook channel as well, so do subscribe to that. Share this video with all your family and friends. We'll see you next time on InfoAir World. This is Sami Malik reporting. Stay tuned.
InfoAir World. Worldwide information.